Your confessions, please. Thank you for all the confessions that came in over the weekend to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Today's comes from Freddie. Freddie, you get the smart speaker. And this says, Dear Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Susie, Holly, Jackie, Katie. So today, delighted to say Sister Holly is back.
Yes.
Back in the house. I also need to say this is a slightly disgusting confession.
Oh, no. Good.
Only if you're eating. I'm just saying if you're eating, okay? It's been 7 years since my last confession, Father Simon. It involves, like my previous one from the early 90s, when I was a young heating engineer working on a newly built, all singing, all dancing sewage farm. So that's where we are. So that's where it's at. Might be best at this point if you advise, but well, I've already done that. Okay. The sewage farm in question was completely new. It collected and treated all sewage from most parts of the northwest of England. Our company was employed to install the pipework and flanges and so on in transporting the sewage from the drains to storage vessels to be treated before being safely disposed of. I'm skipping over various
Yes.
Once the plant was up and running, our company was also contracted to be on site 24 hours a day to make sure if there are any problems that we would deal with them immediately. Okay, fine, so we know where we are. Also on site were the local water company engineers who didn't like us very much, Father Simon, as they believed we were stealing their jobs. Well, it was a lovely Sunday afternoon, and me and my colleague Snowy were walking around the site when two of the local water guys sprinted past us, clearly panicking. Well, we all had walkie-talkies in those days, and due to the fact that we were apparently stealing their jobs when they didn't want us to know, they switched to a secret channel, or what they thought was a secret channel on the walkie-talkies. So, basically, I switched to their so-called private channel on my walkie-talkie, and I heard a man screaming, Major leak, in the gallery. I looked at Snowy, and he said, we better go and see what they've done now. When we reached the gallery, to our disappointment, there was absolutely nothing there. There was no leak or anything, so we didn't know what was going on. As we had about 20 minutes left of our shift, I said to Snowy, let's walk in the underground tunnels to get back to our office. I don't know whether this was like a scenic route or whatever.
Yeah.
As we walked this alternative way to our office, we had to walk through a closed and locked door, obviously opening the door first. Otherwise, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, Father Simon, the sight of a dark-coloured liquid slightly dribbling under this door still wakes me up to this day. A more experienced heating engineer would not have unlocked that door, but a young, eager heating engineer never gave that a second thought. And so, I unlocked the door. I began to open it when it was wrenched from my hand, and in came a 3-foot-high tsunami and covered us both. Again, I'm skipping over quite a lot. We tried our hardest to close the door, but it just kept on coming, and every time we tried to clear the door, there was more in the way.
Yeah.
So we couldn't close the door, so we did what every 25-year-old, and some might say water bosses, would do in this situation. We ran and left the door wide open, allowing the sewage to keep entering the gallery. We ran to the shower area, disposed of our overalls in the waste skip, showered and pretended we didn't know anything. Once we showered, we went back to the gallery. By this time, there were local water engineers on walkie-talkies everywhere. They started asking us questions and asked if we knew how the sewage had got into the area. We said no. We said it a bit sheepishly, I think. No. We've actually been in our office all afternoon. That's what's happened here. So where do I begin, says Freddie. Where do I begin to ask for forgiveness? Not from Snowy, as he ran first and left me with no alternative but to run as well. I was just copying him.
Yeah.
Nor do I ask for forgiveness from the local water engineers, as they didn't like us anyway. But just to point out, we didn't steal their jobs, but I do ask for forgiveness from them anyway. The damage caused by this sewer not only required specialist cleaning companies to clean the area, but the gallery was where all the pumps were housed, and all these pumps had to be replaced as they were all damaged beyond repair. This confession is costing millions. Though in a desperate plea for forgiveness, I have had a water meter fitted for the last 20 years, so they probably recouped a little bit of the money in the intervening time. I lay myself in the hands of you, Father Simon, and your very lovely Forgiveness Collective, and see where I go from there. Well, I would say, Freddie, you're probably not going to get much forgiveness from anyone, is what I would expect, particularly from Sister Holly, who represents authority in this.
Absolutely not forgiving this.
Why, if you can see a dark liquid sort of trickling out of the door, why did you open the door? That is the stupidest part of this confession. Why do it? Why were you curious about it? They then opened it and then ran and left. If they heard this sort of secret walkie-talkie, thing going on, why didn't they go on to that and just say, guys, there's a situation here, and let them know? I think he should have told them, and that's why I don't forgive.
Brother from another sewer gutter.
Am I the only one to think that maybe it's the system that's at fault? I mean, how is it that just opening one
cistern or
cistern?
Yes.
You're very good. But
Smash the cistern.
Well, you open one door and suddenly the whole sewage system collapses. That can't be the way it works. I mean, and how would you you can't close the door once you've got this tidal wave of whatever it is engulfing you. There's no way of getting that door closed. So it definitely is the system that's at fault. I certainly forgive. Whether Fergal Sharkey's going to forgive is a completely different matter. But yes, I definitely forgive.
Okay, well, it's the people's verdict is what we expect. Please, does Freddie get your forgiveness for a rather unpleasant tea time confession? So we had a confession just before the news. Donna Summer and Nick Kershaw, by the way, they didn't send in the confession.
No, they didn't.
It came in from Freddie, and it was the one based in the sewage farm, where basically, despite, obviously, as Holly pointed out, if you see stuff leaking under the door, don't open the door. They did open the door, and then they ran away. People's verdict, here it comes.
So Mel says not forgiven, can't forgive this one. So gross and disgusting.
Yes.
Just picturing that sewage everywhere. Why, oh why, did he open the door? Sue in Grimsby, not forgiven. How disgusting. He should have definitely alerted the right people when all that sewage went everywhere. But Mark, your friendly drain man, says forgiven. I found this confession hilarious. As I work in the sewage industry myself, I can literally picture all of that happening in a sewage works. It happens quite often.
Well, that's slightly disturbing.
dear.
But anyway, if you have a confession and maybe that's provoked a thought in your mind, then send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. If we use it, you get a smart speaker. That's the way that goes. There you go. Albinonis Adagio playing one more time. Into the confessional collective we go. Brother Matthew is here. Sister Holly is back. She's been away. I don't know what she's been doing, but she's been sort of hanging around learning things. And today's confession and smart speaker goes to Clarissa. Good afternoon, Clarissa. Thank you for this tale. No certificate needed. It's far more decent than yesterday's.
Really? Okay.
Even if you're eating whatever. Father Simon and your top team, many years ago, when my husband and I were courting, we went to dinner at a swanky doodle dandy hotel in London. 5 stars, very famous, kind of place with a dress code.
Oh.
Ludicrous, I know, but we both looked amazing. I'm always put off places with a dress code.
Yeah.
So what if I'm not wearing a tie? Come on, it's high quality denim that I'm wearing. We had a lovely table for 2 looking at Tower Bridge. Next to our table was a foreign gentleman who was asleep, shoes off, snoring away. Head and arms on the table, his eyes were closed, he was snoring and dribbling onto the tablecloth. My husband and I obviously tutted quietly and then ordered our food and started eating our meal, accompanied, I have to say, by a lovely, if inexpensive, bottle of wine. Our fellow diner from abroad continued to sleep. The waitress decided it was time to wake him up or move him out. She pushed his arm and he jolted awake. A little bit of acting.
Yeah.
Through broken English, this man ordered some chips and a very expensive bottle of wine. I want chips and a very expensive bottle of wine. He wasn't necessarily from France,
No.
but it was just... When his chips arrived, he shouted a lot that he wanted ketchup. Which once it arrived, he poured half of the bottle onto his chips and then dangled his tie in it. Now, I'm not sure if this was deliberate or just drunken antics, and who knows, there may be some cultures where tie dangling in tomato ketchup is all the rage.
Yeah.
And let's be open and accepting to all. Just because I don't dangle my tie in ketchup, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Can we all agree on that? Can we?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's not very nice, but anyway. Anyway, his very expensive bottle of wine arrived and 1 glass was poured. He took a sip and then promptly fell asleep again. I looked at my husband, who was then just my boyfriend before he got promoted. And
What? Oh, right. Oh, I see. Okay. I got the wrong end of the stick there. Yep.
No, she didn't marry him because
he got promoted.
He was promoted to husband.
Husband, yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that makes sense now.
Yeah, came out wrong. And I said to my husband, then boyfriend, I don't think he wants that bottle. Shall I swap it for our empty, cheaper bottle for his full and expensive one? Well, before David could answer, I quickly leant over, grabbed the bottle and substituted it with our empty one, quick as a flash. I poured us each a glass and tried to look innocent and pointed at the ceiling, discussed news from around the world, that kind of thing. Seconds later, the waitress came back and saw that the gentleman was fast asleep. She called security. I thought my number was up, Father Simon. 2 burly security men arrived. They picked up our empty bottle and said, well, no wonder he's asleep if he'd drunk all of that. Well, the gentleman's room key was on the table, so they picked it up and then lifted him to take him upstairs to his room. Unfortunately, our table was too close, so I was asked to move to enable them to carry him out. Obviously, I graciously did as they asked, making way for this incredibly drunk man from abroad. But not necessarily France. Once he had left, because I don't think in France they actually dip their ties in ketchup. You can't even get decent ketchup in France, let's be honest about it. Once he had left, the restaurant manager came over to us, apologising profusely. He picked up the expensive bottle of wine and insisted on giving us another one on the house. Father Simon, this bottle is costing 3 figures because we looked it up. That's 3 figures. That's a bottle of wine costing 100 quid at least from many years ago. So, Simon, I apologise for my behaviour and seek forgiveness from the restaurant. Obviously, we've never been back. And, of course, the very drunk gentleman who wasn't necessarily from France. The wine was fabulous. Nobody noticed. My husband and I have been married for 21 years and have not confessed to this before, but we still do chuckle at our indiscretion. I mean, Clarissa here, nice face. Clarissa was really super sharp on that. She saw the opportunity, and David, the other half, was clearly going, I don't know. But Clarissa was just in there. She saw her opportunity. She saw the opportunity to make a quick frank, or to, not that he was necessarily French. Judging here, Sister Holly.
That was very sneaky of Clarissa, stealing the very expensive wine. It's not good, you know. He got that wine. I know he fell asleep. I know he dipped his tie in the ketchup. I also have lots of ketchup on my chips, so I can relate to that.
But you don't dangle your tie in it.
I wouldn't dangle my tie in it, no. I wouldn't wear a tie. I also don't like wine. I'd much rather a Ribena. So
it's not all about you, Holly, by the way. It's not about you.
Work. And so that's why I don't forgive, really.
Because you don't drink wine.
No.
Brilliant. Okay.
Brother from another guy.
I mean, you've got to applaud the quick thinking by Clarissa in swapping the 2 bottles. Good for her.
Theft.
Because the guy, the drunk, he was never gonna finish that bottle of wine because he was clearly drunk and asleep. And obviously we've established that this guy probably wasn't French, but he might have been French. And if our Gallic cousins are going to indulge in this kind of tie dangling, then that is where I will draw the line. Not for me, Francois. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Very clearly argued, I think, on both sides. The people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Clarissa and other half David, promoted to husband? On the text, please, 61054. You begin your text with Simon. 61054. Before we continue, we were going up to the news with Tuesday's confession, which came from Clarissa. A terrible tale of tie-dangling foreigners falling asleep in bowls of chips and wine theft. Anyway, the people's verdict is in like this.
We've had a huge reaction tonight, and just about everyone is forgiving, including Ruth, who says, Clarissa is my hero. The expensive wine would surely have just gone to waste. So she basically saved it. As a lover of wine myself, I think she did the decent thing. Steve says, forgiven. The establishment insist on a dress code and then allow this bizarre behaviour to spoil other diners' evenings. I bet they charge the 3rd bottle to the gentleman's bill as well. And finally, Jane from Hastings says, I certainly think she should be forgiven, as she clearly saved the poor foreign wretch from feeling even worse if he drank the whole bottle. However, where I think forgiveness cannot be given is to the posh restaurant for serving their ketchup in a bottle. Unforgivable.
No, it's the best way to... Of course, you want it in the bottle.
No, you have one of those little silver bowls when you're in a posh restaurant.
No, you want to see who made it.
Really?
You don't want any old rubbish, do you?
Okay.
Ketchup's very important.
Right.
Anyway, thank you. If you have a confession, we'd love to see it, please, and maybe swap it for a smart speaker if we use it. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Taking in all the confessions that you've been sending in record amounts. Thank you very much indeed. You send them to confessions confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Brother Matthew is in here. Sister Holly, the stern voice of authority. Although I have to say, I think generally there's an email here this is a confession from Jacob, and I think not forgiveness is going to be ordered for the day. I'm just guessing. Might be entirely wrong. Jacob says, Father Simon and the team, this confession comes from my distant past, specifically 51 to 53 years ago inclusive. The reason there's an exact time period is because, embarrassingly, as you're about to read, this went on for 2 years.
Wow.
It's a confession that spans 2 years. I was quite a poorly child, or just a bit of a wimp, as my friends and neighbours called me sickly, and I would often spend long periods off school being looked after by my dear old Nan. Now, I was never a religious person, but I did follow my Nan around when she did some volunteering at our local church, and also helped all her neighbours in the sheltered community that she lived in. I didn't mind at all when I went with my Nan to visit her neighbours, as I would very often be rewarded by her elderly friends with sweets, or even a small amount of money, normally a penny. This I thought was amazing, so would then come home of an evening after being picked up by my mum with a fair amount of money rattling in my pocket. So to me at the time, it was well worth following my Nan around all day long to visit her elderly friends, even Mrs. Bean, who put copious amounts of snuff up her nostrils, and then it would all fall out onto my face when she bent down to kiss me. Poor me.
Lovely.
Nice detail. This went on for quite a while. Anyways, this was specifically around the time of decimalisation, Father Simon, and a whole host of new coins were introduced to the UK, and the old coins were going to be phased out. Enter my twin sister to this story. She was a bit jealous of me always having money on me, and especially a pocketful of the soon-to-be phased-out penny coins, and so insisted on joining me on visits to my Nan's friends to be part of this new money-making venture. However, this ploy, joining me, resulted in Nan's friends no longer giving us both money, and instead we had to settle with boring old arrowroot biscuits. Are these still around? Says Jacob. I looked them up. They're made of starch and were very popular in Napoleonic times.
Okay. So yeah.
Anyway, they sound a bit dull.
Yeah.
My mum was also becoming a bit suspicious of both me and my sister now developing the same illnesses at the same time. Anyway, me and my sister had to have a plan, and this is where I deeply need forgiveness. Somehow, while we both had fabricated the very same short illnesses and were again left at Nan's to be looked after, Mum and Dad went to work, and whilst at Nan's we would end up playing childish games, especially my favourite, where I bet my twin sister that she could not fit both upper and lower sets of Nan's spare teeth in her tiny 4-year-old mouth.
Oh.
She did, but we had a terrible time pulling them out again.
Superb.
One day, whilst rummaging around in Nan's old bungalow, we found a drawer containing dozens of very small envelopes that were obviously for some sort of donation purpose. My sister opened one of these many envelopes and found that it contained one of the brand new shiny 50p pieces. In fact, as we were soon to find out, all the envelopes had a 50p coin in them. My sister and I then had a brilliant idea to get our money-making plans back on track. We both decided to replace every single 50p with a coin of similar size and weight, which was the old 1 penny coin. There were loads of spare envelopes, so we both went about this deceitful task, ripping open the envelopes, replacing the 50p's with our collection of old coins, and then sealing up the envelopes, hoping that they would not be opened until a much later time, when we weren't around, and both promising never to do this again. Well, this was too much of a temptation, and I had loads of new friends because I always had money, so we did this every 6 months for the next 2 years.
Goodness.
Or until I could no longer get hold of the old penny coins anymore. Please, I seek not just forgiveness from you and the team, but my dear Nan. Also, more importantly, the poor people who opened up the envelopes expecting 50p donations from my Nan, only to find a paltry collection of 1p coins. This is the old penny.
Yes.
So this is 1 denarius. Not even worth a single penny. I'm just saying this for Holly, representing the younger audience. So I have to say, I think this is quite this is a shocking tale, because it's stealing from Nan, Jacob says, dear Nan, from whom you've just stolen pounds and pounds and pounds worth of 50p's, replacing them with ill-gotten gains of the old penny. Sister Holly.
Stealing is always wrong. Stealing donations to the church is particularly wrong.
And the poor.
And the poor.
And the needy.
It's quite bad, really, yes. I know you liked all the sweets and the money, and you liked the 50p's, and it was very fun, but not good behaviour, not forgiven.
Quite right, but brother from another gutter?
Well, I'm going to forgive, and here's the reason why. Why is Nan keeping all the money in envelopes? Surely what you should be doing is you keep the money, and then when the time comes that you need to make the donation, you put the money in the envelope, and that way you're not going to lose any of the money in the drawers, are you? So really, isn't it the system that's at fault?
No.
It probably is. It probably is
Jacob.
the system. Also, I mean, it strikes me that having to put up with snuff falling on you and Napoleonic biscuits, it's payback, isn't it? It's payback for all of the Napoleonic biscuits.
The trauma.
So, the trauma of that. So I think definitely forgiven.
So the arrowroot biscuits are the basis of the defence.
Yes, quite right.
Okay, it's a load of nonsense. So, do you forgive Jacob, yes or no? It's the people's verdict, please. On the text 61054, the first word is Simon. Forgiveness for Jacob, it's entirely down to you. 61054 on the text, first word is Simon. And the people's verdict on tonight's confession, which came from Jacob, we called it You Little Thief, because he and his twin, many, many years ago, stole money from Grandma in lots of 50p pieces and swapping them for 1 denarius, the old 1 penny, because it felt roughly the same, although it didn't. They were roughly the same weight, even though they weren't. Anyway, they were rotten thieves. That's what happened in the people's verdict. Here it comes.
And everyone's not forgiving tonight. Not forgiven, says Ian in Sidcup. And I don't just mean Jacob for his heinous crime, for which he will spend eternity in damnation. Oh. It's Matt I can't forgive for forgiving Jacob. Steve in North Yorkshire, not forgiven. The false teeth sealed it for me. And finally, Mark says forgiven because he's admitted the wrongdoing of his past misdemeanour and would like to start afresh. And Simon, back in the day of thin arrowroot biscuits, they played an important part. If you had a bad stomach and couldn't keep anything down, then those biscuits would absorb all of the toxins that made you sick.
Oh, right. And also, apparently, if you ever played Shove Halfpenny, this is another outdated reference. If you ever played Shove Halfpenny, it was arrowroot powder, which you used as a lubrication for the coins that you were shoving.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Napoleonic War stories.
Okay.
So many of those. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay, so if you have a confession, we'd love to hear it. We'll exchange it for a smart speaker. Jacobs gets today's, but maybe we could give you one. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Hits Radio. Well, here we go. It's confession time. Gather round, and Sister Holly's in the house. Brother from another gutter is here. Today's tale comes from the father of the bride. Thus it is signed. Well, that's what I'm going to call him. Father Simon, my confession goes all the way back to 2001. And should I say, it would be wonderful to hear it as my daughter Laura is getting married. And I would love to play this out at her wedding as part of my speech.
Wow.
Ooh.
Though obviously she may see me in a different light once she hears this confession. I think that's very true. I think she will see Dad in a totally different light. So my youngest daughter, Laura, was coming up to her 10th birthday. Was eagerly, very, very excited about the imminent arrival of Lord of the Rings. The new movie was about to hit the cinemas. And after seeing the film, I have to tell you, she had a huge crush on Orlando Bloom, who, as you know, played Legolas in the epic film, the Sindar elf of the woodland realm, son of Thranduil, member of the Fellowship with the long flowing blonde hair and a mysteriously never-ending supply of arrows in his quiver. You see a shot, he's got 6 arrows. Fire 6 at the orc, or whatever it is that's moving. Cut back to him, he's got another 6.
He's got another 6.
Incredible.
Great quiver.
What a man he was. That's Legolas we're talking about. Anyway, so my daughter had a number of pictures and posters all around her room and constantly talked about Orlando Bloom. Thinking what to get her for her birthday, I came up with what I initially thought was a tremendous idea. A signed picture of Orlando Jonathan Blanchard Copeland Bloom. To give him his full name. Laura loved him. So I spent many weeks hunting on eBay and other websites for just the right signed photograph. However, the signed pictures were going for quite a considerable amount of money due to the popularity of the film and indeed the actor. I followed a couple of pictures that had started at a low amount, but they ended up going for in excess of £100.
Wow.
Now, whilst I was following these pictures on eBay, And please, at this point, bear in mind this is before Greatest Hits Radio started. Steve Wright in the afternoon had an autograph expert telling the listeners the risk of purchasing autographs as they may be fake, and went on to tell a tale of someone who bought a Beatles signed picture from the early 60s for thousands of pounds, only to find out it was a fake as it was signed with a felt-tip pen and they hadn't been invented back then. I'm afraid to say I had an idea. As this wasn't going to be sold on, and as I couldn't guarantee getting an authentic signature anyway, maybe I could do it myself. Maybe I should do it myself. So I purchased a 10x8 glossy picture of lovely, gorgeous Orlando Bloom off a website. And studying his signature, I practiced over and over again. When I finally signed it, I thought it looked pretty good, even though I say so myself. To Laura, love and hugs, Orlando, kiss, kiss, kiss.
Wow. Okay.
The funniest thing,
Yeah.
it was my eldest daughter was studying media at university at the time. When I told her what I was getting her sister and how I knew someone who worked on the film, she was really excited and asked if I could get her one. I nearly said, yeah, sure, how many would you like? Anyway, here's the thing, Father Simon. My daughter loved the framed picture and treasures it to this day.
To this day.
Yeah.
She has kept that signed picture by the side of her bed for many years. I think her new husband might have something to say about that. I would like to apologise to my daughter for passing off an Orlando signed photograph as an Orlando original when it was me, your dad. I'd also like to apologise to my new son-in-law. Please don't think your new father-in-law is a total crook and a scam artist.
No.
I'd also like to apologise to Orlando for cheapening his output.
Yeah.
Though actually, to be honest, he's done quite a good job of that himself.
Yes, he
recently.
has. Yeah.
I fall at your feet and I need your forgiveness. Well, let's see if you're going to get any. The choir are in and Sister Holly goes first.
I see what the father of the bride was trying to do. He was trying to make his daughter Laura really happy on her 10th birthday, and it worked. She was thrilled, and I can totally imagine that. I can totally imagine that sort of ecstatic fun that she had, and now it's all gone very, very downhill. That lying, the deceit of writing the autograph, and it's not actually Orlando Bloom. She's going to be heartbroken
Yes,
from
she
this.
is, I'm afraid.
I don't forgive the father of the bride.
Imagine this is being played out right now at the wedding.
Yeah.
The atmosphere will have just dropped. There'll be tumbleweed and everyone will be pointing. In fact, let's all point at the father of the bride.
Quite right. Yes.
Brother from another gutter.
Remember to tip your waiting staff.
Yes.
I'm going to forgive, and here's the reason why. Nobody loses from this. I mean, the father gets a very happy daughter. The daughter gets a picture that she wanted and couldn't believe her luck that she'd got this signed picture from Orlando Bloom. And Orlando Bloom's not harmed by this. And in fact, the only loser from this has been Orlando Bloom's career since Lord of the Rings. Not really been lighting up the box office since then.
Pirates
Have
of the
you?
Caribbean.
Well, apart from that, yeah. So I'm going to say forgiven.
Right, okay, so there you go. So
Yeah.
it's fine. So it's 1-1 in the studio, as it tends to be.
Yeah.
It's entirely down to you. Do you forgive the father of the bride, yes or no? On the text, please, 61054. The first word is Simon. Thank you very much. People's verdict incoming. Just before the news, we had a confession from the father of the bride in which he admitted to faking a signed photograph of Orlando Bloom, Cinder elf of the woodland realm, son of Thranduil, member of the fellowship. Oh, you remember Orlando?
Yeah.
She had it by her bedside for many years and treasures it to this day, until this very day when she's discovered her whole life is a fake.
What? That's
Well,
a bit
not all
harsh.
that, but,
I mean, no.
Her world has crumbled.
Okay.
Her reliable father exposed for the scam artist that he is. Okay,
Right,
people's
again,
verdict, here we
harsh.
go.
Most not forgiving. Not forgiven, says Gemma. I also had a huge crush on Orlando Bloom, and I would be devastated to discover that my beloved's signature was faked. Alan in Huyton, if I'd done that to my daughter, I wouldn't be sending this text. Not forgiven. And Maria, not forgiven. I was traumatized by exactly this with an adamant signed pic. I am now 56, and I have still not forgiven my brother.
That's the way it goes in families. So if you have a confession, we would love to see it, please. Confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And if we use it, you get a smart speaker. That's the way that goes.